Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope. Nothing said on the Low Carb MD podcast is medical advice. Please consult your own doctor before making any lifestyle changes.
Hello and welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. Tro, we have an original cast member here.
Oh my God, I'm excited, man. I'm so excited to be here.
Look what I got last night. It's probably backwards, I know, but the Hunger Code came last night, man. Hard copy. I can't sell it. It says advanced reader's copy, not for resale.
Listen,
dang it.
You know what? I'm excited. You know, can we start with gratitude, Brian? I'm always so, because 8 years ago when you and I were clowning around, we got together with somebody who took a little bit of risk on us and helped us out when we were just starting out. And he's here back with us. And I just want to give a little bit of gratitude to Jason Fung. One, because honestly, your book has changed all of my patients' lives. All of your books have changed my patients' lives. But two, for helping us initially when we first started this podcast, 7 or 8 years ago, just keeping conflicts out and, no commercials, keeping it, basically not for profit. And I think that sentiment is something that stayed with me. And I just want to thank you for that. And thank you for everything that you've done. And I know probably for you, it's like, I just write books. I'm just a doctor. But no, you're courageous. And you said everything that needed to be said to the people who needed to be said, needed to hear it. And now, now we're in a place where, gosh, the guidelines have been flipped upside down. And I don't think it would have been that way if it wasn't for your books and wasn't for what you do.
Yeah,
So
and I'll add to the gratitude here too, because I'm just a standard doc working 18-hour days, working my butt off and not understanding diabetes, just watching the catastrophes that happen. And one of my patients comes in and lose 40 pounds and he starts talking about fasting. I go, that's crazy. That's like, you're going to eat twice as much the next day. And I didn't understand the physiology. He goes, I'm not hungry the next day. It's so weird. And then, so I go online, who do I find? Jason Fung doing this interview with metabolic Mike, I think. And it was like, talking about all this benefits of fasting, and then at the end Mike's like, if it's so great, how come everyone's not doing it? And he's like, you can't sell it. It's just, you do it, right? So helping people and guiding. So you've done you've helped so many patients, and so many of my patients come in and I go, how do you know about low carb? Jason Fung. It's like all these guys who've criticized you, I've never once heard their name mentioned as saying like they changed my life and saved my life. I'm off insulin now, right? So huge contribution. So it's an honor to have you, of course. And your books have been, I've used them in Guatemala to help people. I've used them like on medical missions to translate to like every language on earth. But it's just amazing how much of a reach you've had, and that you don't slow down. You just always just keep going.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your friendship and over all these years. And really, it's I'm really happy that we've been able to sort of keep it going, because really, it's we didn't, none of us, we didn't learn it in medical school, right? None of us got taught this. It was sort of this completely different thing. Like when I started thinking about fasting and weight loss and everything, it was basically everything, all my conclusions were completely contrary to what everything I was taught, all calories in, calories out, all this stuff, right? But it was kind of garbage, right? And the guidelines, low fat. I mean, we all did it. Like we all learned it. We all learned it in medical school. We all, got taught that, but it was all untrue. So I'm just, you know, happy to be here in a place where we've hopefully made a difference to people, and really spend a lot of time, all of us, to sort of not like try to influence people, but just educate, really, like through your podcast, or I know you guys are really involved in the Society for Metabolic Health and all this, really focusing on, the key issues. Because gosh, I mean, I still see so much out there, like the dietary guidelines. I think there's a huge step forward, right? And that's going to make a good difference. But a lot of the stuff, like, metabolic health, you guys talk about a lot, and it's like it's so important and it gets lost in oh, it's all about cholesterol. And it's like cholesterol's like maybe a teensy weensy portion of it, right? So yeah, it's been great, guys, and thank you for all your support over the years and your friendship. So love to keep it going, keep working. There's always more to do because there's stuff that needs to be said. And that's where I think it was really, that's why I kept going, because it's like as I kept digging, I'm like, there's all this stuff I need to say because it's all wrong. Like everything we're getting taught is all wrong. Now, of course, with the new dietary guidelines, it's sort of growing consensus that, hey, it was really bad, like the thing. And what I love about the pyramid, is that by inverting it, the statement is that, hey, the previous pyramid, it was really bad, like really, really bad. There's a lot wrong with it. And no other guideline ever says stuff like that, right? In the first sentence, it's like these are the most change you'll ever see, right? It's true because nobody wants to admit that they were wrong. But finally, somebody has the courage to say, you know what? That old pyramid, it was really bad. So this is how we're going to show it. So yeah, great to be here, guys.
Oh my God, how do we even start? It's funny that you said that when at the at the HHS building, the head of the FDA, Dr. Marty Makary, basically said, you have been lied to, that the corporate interests, have been so strong that, if you're somebody out there, you've been gaslit. And a lot of the times when I'm watching an interview that you did, or let's say it's with Dr. Mike or, whoever it is, right? I'm watching you speak, you're sort of speaking to exactly that, that a lot of these people who've been suffering with metabolic disease, they've been gaslit. They've been gaslit on cholesterol, to focus on that. They've been gaslit to focus on, calorie restriction. And all you do is just simply debunk that one by one, and I think people appreciate that. People appreciate just the easy way where you explain this doesn't make sense and you've been gaslit. And that message, I think, is so powerful and it's so needed. And the fact that the hunger code, I mean, it's, if you look at the Minnesota starvation experiment, your new book, The Hunger Code, which, guys, the link will be in the show notes. Go pre-order it, go buy it. It's what is the first side effect of caloric restriction? Right? What is the side effect? Right? Can you tell us, Dr. Fung, what is the side effect of hunger
It's completely predictable, right? Because think about it this way. You know, there's this whole thing about a calorie is a calorie, so therefore everything's the same, but it's so wrong because if you simply reduce calories, if you think about hunger and calories, if you reduce calories, then hunger goes up. That's, if you don't change your diet and you just eat less of it, which is the advice that we all got taught, right? You eat less, hunger goes up. Now you're constantly fighting yourself, right? But if you think about it, it's all wrong because if you think about Ozempic, which obviously is a very, very powerful weight reducing, it doesn't restrict calories in any way, right? It reduces hunger. When you focus on the hunger, reduce the hunger, then the calories will come down too. It's not just about the calories, but part of it is the calories. And that now you notice you're not fighting with yourself anymore, right? Even if you think about it logically, there are physical ways to restrict calories, right? You could wire somebody's jaw shut, and that was actually popular in the 50s and 60s as a weight loss method. Did it work? No, not at all, because people got hungrier and then they found ways to get around that calorie restriction. And then that goes into the 2010s where you get the lap bands, which is basically the same idea, right? You put a band around the stomach, you restrict it, or you cut out a huge piece, that's a sleeve gastrectomy, you cut out a huge part of the stomach so you really can't eat. So you're physically restricting calories Do they lose weight? Not really. The lap band is basically gone. Nobody does it anymore, right? My friend, the surgeon, says, the most popular procedure for a lap band is removal. These things don't work, right? So when you reduce calories, but don't focus on the hunger, you lose. When you focus on the hunger, such as with drugs such as, Ozempic, then you lose weight. But it's not just Ozempic. It's really, if you look at the history of drugs that cause weight loss, it's always about the hunger. So what controls hunger? Well, it's really your hormones, right? There's all these hormones that affect your body set weight, which is like your thermostat, but it acts through the hunger. So if you activate GLP-1, you're going to reduce hunger. But before that, there was fen-phen, right? And fen-phen, if you remember, was fenfluramine, phentermine, which acted upon two pathways, one of which was increased sympathetic tone. And increased sympathetic tone, which is one of the fight or flight response, is a hormone, and it reduces hunger. So phentermine, increased sympathetic tone, reduced hunger, people lost weight. And fen-phen caused a 17% reduction in body weight, which is on par with Ozempic. It was extraordinarily successful as a weight loss drug, but of course it caused heart problems, so it got pulled. Phentermine acts upon serotonin, which affects the hedonic side of things, which, we'll talk about in terms of the types of hunger. But increased sympathetic tone is another hormone. So when you affect the hormones, which affects the hunger, and you decrease it, you lose weight. But the same thing happens in nicotine. So nicotine, everybody forgets, actually causes weight loss. Well known, smokers weigh less than non-smokers, right? Amphetamines, so speed was an old 1950s drug for weight loss. And it actually belonged to a class called anorexiants. Again, sort of lost in the annals of history, but anorexiants means a drug that causes anorexia. In other words, it killed hunger, just like fen-phen, just like Ozempic these days, right? So again, lots of side effects. Amphetamines are not used for weight loss anymore. Crack is the same thing. It just kills your hunger, right? But again, it points to the fact that you have to focus on the hunger and not the calories, because
It is
that's
used for weight loss, by the way. It is used they're using, Vyvanse, amphetamines are used for binge eating. Just sorry to,
Are they? Okay,
yeah. So they are, which is unfortunate, right? But they are literally using an amphetamine for binge eating. That is the standard of care right now, Jason. If that doesn't make you upset, I know Brian's upset, but it's an addictive. It's cocaine. It's like cocaine, and I'm not saying that it doesn't help in some scenarios. It just, but sorry, I didn't mean to ruin the flow there.
I didn't know that, so it's good to know. But again, it just points to the fact that you really have to look at the hunger, and the reason you have to think about it, I go over this in the hunger code, is because calories in, calories out is very, very shallow sort of first order thinking, right? And so there's a concept in logic called the three whys. And that means to really understand a problem or understand what causes, the root cause, you really have to ask the question why 3 times. So if you were to ask the question, for example, why did the Titanic sink? You might say because it hit an iceberg. And technically that's correct, but it's not useful because it's shallow thinking. So if you're to say, what advice could you give people? You'd say, don't hit icebergs, right? Because that's what caused it, right? It's like, that's not particularly useful advice. So how do you get to that deeper level of understanding? Well, you say, okay, the first why is, why did the Titanic sink? Because it hit an iceberg. The second why is that, why did it hit the iceberg? And it's like, because the captain couldn't get out of the way. The third why would be to say, why couldn't the captain get out of the way? It's because it was going too fast. So the answer to the question, why did the Titanic sink, is actually because it was going too fast. So now you can tell a captain to avoid marine disaster, slow down. And that's useful advice. Whereas if you stop at the first why, the really, really shallow first order thinking, you get don't hit iceberg, which is not useful advice. And it's the same if you're to say, why is somebody gaining weight? Because calories in is greater than calories out. This is always true, right? But it's the shallow sort of first order, superficial level thinking. It is true, but it's not useful because, and that's the don't hit icebergs advice, right? So then you have to go into the second question, which is, why is calories in greater than calories out, right? I'm not interested that it is greater than calories in is greater than calories out. I know that that is true. But why is it greater? And the answer is because you're hungry, right? The thing is that we know, why do you eat? Because you're hungry. We eat because we're hungry, and we stop eating when we're full. That is a fundamental truth. Why would you even deny it? So the problem of overeating, if you define it as greater than calories out, is the problem of overhunger. Which leads you to the third sort of most interesting question to me, which is, why are you hungry? And this is where you actually can break down. When you look into the literature, there's actually at least three main different types of hunger, main types of hunger. One is homeostatic hunger, which is the physical hunger that we all think about, right? Your stomach is growling and all this sort of stuff. And that's controlled by hormones. You think it's controlled by, what you eat and calories, but it's not, right? Because you could eat 800 calories of a steak and you'll feel full and you'll stop eating. You can drink an 800 calorie frappuccino and you're hungry like 2 minutes later. It's 800 calories, same thing, but completely different hormonal effects, therefore completely different effects on your hunger. But that's only the hormonal side. But there's a lot of hormones that go into it because again, our body runs on hormones. Those are the chemical messengers. There's insulin, there's cortisol, there's leptin, there's ghrelin, there's sympathetic tone, there's baroreceptors in the stomach, there's the vagus nerve, there's like GLP-1s, GIP, estrogen. Estrogen actually decreases appetite, which is why perimenopausal women actually get a rise. Progesterone goes up in the second part of the ovulatory cycle, and that's why women tend to eat more in the second part. And that's why you use in cancer patients Megace, which is an appetite stimulant, right? But again, those are like 11, 12 different types of hormones that affect hunger. And that's what you have to deal with. That's why it's a hormonal issue and not the caloric issue, because it's not about the calories. The effect on your hunger is completely different. But there's also, that's just that's not even the end of the story. That's sort of where the obesity code sort of left off. And then we go into the hunger code, which is a sort of follow-up to that, because there's actually the three types. There's the homeostatic physical hunger. Then you have the emotional hunger, which is called hedonic hunger, because eating food gives us pleasure, right? We all know it. We all understand that. So why deny it, right? So if you're eating foods because you're trying to make yourself feel better, which is emotional eating, which is comfort foods, well, then you're not eating to satisfy this physical hunger. You're eating to satisfy this emotional hunger, which requires a completely different toolkit to deal with. And that's where the ultra processed foods get you into real trouble, because it is designed to be ultra rewarding, right? We've all read this, right? Bliss points and salt and sugar and fat and all this stuff, right? And how it lights up your reward centers in your brain. And that's why things like phentermine, which is part of fen-phen, really acts along the hedonic side of it. That's where food addictions come in, right? But if you have a food addiction, you need to know it so you can treat it like an addiction, right? And that's the hedonic hunger. And then there's a third type of hunger, which is probably one of the most important ones we almost never talk about, which is the social and environmental hunger, which is called conditioned hunger. And conditioned hunger is sort of this fascinating offshoot where from behavioral psychology, which is that you can stimulate hunger simply by pairing it with other things, right? So the classic experiment is Pavlov's dog, where they have dogs,
Mhm.
they give it food and it salivates, it gets hungry, right? That's normal. If you pair a bell to the food, then the dogs will learn and start salivating at the sound of a bell without seeing the food. because it's always paired with it. So it starts to get hungry at the sound of the bell, which is a neutral stimulus, right? It's a conditioned response. So therefore, what happens in modern life is that we pair food with everything, right? You go sit in the car, you start eating, right? You go through the drive-through, you go sit in the movie theater, you want to eat, you sit in front of the TV, you want to eat, you sit at your desk, you want to eat, you're walking down the street, you want to eat. It's breakfast time, you must eat. It's coffee time, you have to get a snack. There's this continual exhortation. You must snack, you must snack, you must not, otherwise you're not going to be healthy, right? That was the whole thing from 10 years ago. But what happens, of course, is that it becomes a conditioned hunger. So every time you go, you're getting stimulus to eat. You must eat, you must eat, you must eat. There's this constant thing because you go to the TV, you go to the car, you go everywhere you go to the mall, you go here, you go here. Everywhere you go, you've got this conditioned stimulus, and now you're creating the hunger. And this is the problem, that it's not just about the individual, it's about the society, because certain societies will look down upon those behaviors and they have a lot less problems with obesity because they're not creating this conditioned hunger, right? But the thing is that if you really want to understand how to lose weight, you have to take into account all of these because that's the sort of deeper root cause analysis. And one person is going to be one thing, and another person is going to be another. It's not all about calories, right? This is the like to the man with a hammer, every problem is a nail, right? So if your problem is emotional eating, eat fewer calories. What? Right? If your problem is, you're not getting enough sleep, eat fewer calories. What? Like, what are you talking about, right? If your underlying problem is that you don't get enough sleep, your stress levels are high, then deal with your sleep problem and your stress. Don't just say eat fewer calories. How are you solving the problem? If you have food addiction, eat fewer calories. If your problem is ultra-processed food, eat fewer calories. What? Even if they're ultra-processed foods? What are you talking about? Like, why would you solve a problem like that? Who in medicine does that?
It's like saying you're an alcoholic, drink less alcohol.
Exactly.
Right? Just drink less. Like, well, if you have a problem, and a lot of the stuff you're saying, Jason, is so. I just got off a call with a patient, and she goes, like, as soon as I walk in the door, I'm hungry from work. Like, that's like, so many people, they could fast all day, they could eat, they get in the house, like myself included, they go, okay, time to eat. But if I got home 2 hours earlier or 2 hours later, I would be hungry. It's that stimulus that we get, right? Like, you go, now's my time to relax, or now's my time to reward for a hard day, or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's a real problem. If you look at different societies around the world, they don't have the same sort of problem. And that it's an environmental issue because, you can take a Japanese person in Japan and his risk or her risk of obesity is extraordinarily low. Now move that same person to the United States and their risk of obesity just goes way up. And there's lots of studies. There's one in the New England Journal that said if your friend becomes obese, your own risk of obesity goes up by like 170%. There's studies of military families where you move them to a place, a county, that has a high obesity rate, and their risk of obesity goes up, right? It's not the person, it's the environment. You need to know this because if you know that, you can start to look at your environment and say, how are we going to change this environment that we're in, break some of these habits, get rid of some of the conditioned hunger, figure out what problems are actually underlying, what is causing this hunger, right? That's the question you need to know. And that's where this calories discussion is just so incredibly superficial. It's just the drink less alcohol, don't hit icebergs, right? It's like, did I just solve every marine disaster in the world and worldwide alcoholism? Maybe, no, I didn't. Right? It's the stupidest advice ever. Just like eat your calories. It's like, no. It's
Well, I think, that's the thing, when we look at the calorie model and when we try to apply to obesity, that's the issue, right? The issue becomes Something could be partially correct but still be unhelpful, right? So, it's true, to get rich, you need to make more money, right? And to get rich, you need to make more money. That statement doesn't help anybody, right? It's not a helpful guide, right? It's like to be able to jump higher, you need to be able to outpace. Yeah, to fly a plane, you need to basically outpace gravity, right? Your lift needs to be greater than gravity. Like, it's a true statement, but it's useless, right?
Yeah.
If you have a flat tire, you need to pump more air in your tire than you let out. Like, it's true. If your tire is flat, if you pump more air in your tire than you let out, your tire will be functional at some point. So the thing is
Just like the money example. So if you think about a bank account, right? Bank is where you save money. So that equals money in minus money out, right? That is always true. Just like body fat is a store of calories. It's a store of calories equals calories in minus calories. That is always true. But making more money doesn't mean you're going to save more money. Okay. They're fundamentally two completely different things, right? And this is the whole problem because you have these sports stars who make $40 million a year, and then 3 years after they retire, they're bankrupt, right? So making more money doesn't mean you're going to save more money. Same thing with calories in, calories out. Body fat, which is your sort of bank of calories, if you eat fewer calories, it doesn't mean you're going to store fewer calories. They're two different things. So if you think about the energy balance equation, right? Body fat equals calories in, calories out. Always true, but doesn't mean what most people think it means. You could rewrite that. You can rewrite that and say calories in equals body fat plus calories out, right? It's just switching the terms. But what it says is that for every calorie you eat, your body can either store it or it can burn it. But which one does it do, right? If you eat 500 fewer calories, you could either store 500 less or you could burn 500 less. But which one does it do? Well, that depends on the hormones. It's not the number of calories that's important. It's what your body does with those hormones. And that's why it's not simply just the calories. It's a very incomplete discussion of what happens to those calories. But it doesn't break any rules of thermodynamics, right? Nobody's breaking any laws of thermodynamics.
Well, and it's like what you taught us too early on is okay, you're 400 pounds. Because it always bothered me. I'm like, how can someone be 400 pounds? You have all this energy we store for later to use. And then you're miserable, starving all day. How can that possibly be? And then you go, once your insulin's super high and it blocks you from getting to your fat stores, you have a ton of money in the bank, but you can't spend the money. The guard is there keeping you from getting there. So these concepts of fasting, intermittent fat, all these things of lowering that, get rid of the guard so you can get your money, get paid.
Exactly. Like if you have a bank and but no money in your wallet, you're gonna be suffering, right? So if you have 400,000 calories of stored energy in body fat, the question is, why are you hungry? Right? Because they are hungry. And it could be all different things, right? They could be addicted, or they could have a very high insulin level that is blocking them from releasing those calories. And we've known for 50 years that insulin inhibits lipolysis, for example. So insulin blocks fat burning. When your insulin is very high, you can't pull those calories out of storage. So it's like your bank being closed. You can't get that money out. You can't get the energy out. So you're hungry and you go eat, even though you have all this excess body weight. So the question is not the number of calories. The question is, where are those calories? What are your body doing with the calories? And that depends on, the insulin, the cortisol, all of those hormones together. And that's what together sets that sort of body fat thermostat, because that's another concept that's been known for years. Like I was reading papers from like 1980 and they were talking about this, right? It's like 1980 is like 45 years ago, right? And it's like, and they were talking about these concepts already. Why did we forget all about it, right? The idea that you simply eat a few calories and if you have a few excess, you throw them into the fat stores, like, a doorknob, boom, it's the extra one here, just throw it in, that's not true, because people say things like, oh, we're designed to store calories. So now that we're it's easy to get calories, we're all doomed to get fat. Like, no, that's completely false. Like, you could look at other countries in the world that have lots of food. Japan, right? There's lots of food everywhere. Nobody's looking for food. There's stores everywhere. But the rate of obesity is much lower. So it's not just simply that you're designed to store calories. And if you look at wild animals, think about it. How much body fat you carry is very tightly regulated. If you are a predator and you're too fat, you're gonna starve because you can't catch anything. If you're a prey animal and you're too fat, you're gonna die because you're gonna get caught, right? So you can't have too much body fat. It's very important. And if you have too little body fat, you're gonna starve. You'll never survive the winter. So that body fat is set at a certain weight. So the point is that there are certain hormones that push it up, and there are certain hormones that push it down. So insulin pushes it up, cortisol pushes it up, GLP-1 pushes it down, sympathetic tone pushes it down. So if you're overweight, your problem is that your thermostat is set too high. Just like, the thermostat in your room. If you go into a room and it's really, really hot, do you say, oh, let's check out all the sources of heat in minus heat out? Or do you say, who set the thermostat so high, right? Yeah. Let's turn it down. Well, that's the issue. You got to look, and what's setting the thermostat? Well, it's your hormones. It's all of these hormones together. It's not easy, right? It's not simple. Like, we dumb it down to this simple calories in, calories out. You miss all of the complexity of human physiology, and then you wonder why it doesn't work, because you've missed all the complexity of those hormones. You don't go from a food to weight gain. Food contains calories, yes, but it contains macronutrients, carbs, and so on. And then you have to digest the food. And there's, in the hunger code, I talk about 10 different things that modify your digestion. But then it has to be absorbed. So it has to go from your stomach into your intestines, into your blood. So there's absorption, and there's like 10 different things, including like food order, the presence of acids, the timing, late meals versus early meals, all kinds of things. And then that's absorption, which affects your hormones, which affects then your body set thermostat, which is your body weight. So it goes from foods, which have all this thing, digestion, absorption, hormones, and then weight, right? It doesn't go from calories to weight. It's simple. It's completely wrong, right? Completely wrong. We've figured out all of these things in physiology for the last 100 years, and then we throw it all out and just say, no, it's just about calories. Like, well, read a textbook of physiology. All these detailed pathways, right? Krebs cycle, all these detailed pathways of carbohydrate metabolism, amino acid metabolism, fat metabolism. Is there anywhere in there you see the word calories in this huge textbook of physiology? Like, where do you see calories? You don't, because the calories doesn't exist there. Carbs exist, right? Glucose metabolism exists. How you break down fatty acids, how you break down amino acids, right? Those exist, but not calories. That word is meaningless in a physiological standpoint, right? Because it matters very much if you take 100 calories of cookies or 100 calories of broccoli. They're very, very different.
Yeah, that's why it's so amazing, Jason. Like, when I hear you talk, I just laugh because all these guys who attack you on Twitter and stuff, like, they go, he says calories don't matter. Like, you know what I mean? They make this statement, but they're not getting to the nuance of what you're saying. Like, you've addressed all those things. Of course it matters, but there's these important physiologic things. And, when you're talking, I think about it's like, for a lot of us who've yo-yo dieted our whole life, it gets harder and harder. And you look at these guys that are boxers. You don't see a boxer like that fought, lightweight to middleweight. Like, they go up every year. Even though they're working out hard, they're eating the same stuff. They're like, I can't get down. I can't get those extra 10 pounds off anymore, because our body's adjusting to what we do.
Yeah.
Physiologically, it says you've lost 80 pounds last year. Okay, I'm not going to let you do that anymore. So things slow down. We plateau. We get into these things that frustrate us.
Yeah. And there's so much in there that is important. Like, if you take two different foods, right? You can actually take the same food, which is to me is such an interesting thing because David Ludwig, who's a professor at he used to be at Harvard. I think he's in Copenhagen now. But anyway, he did this really interesting study a few years ago where he took a food and it was oatmeal, and he compared steel cut oats to instant oats, and it's the same calories, same carbohydrates, same food, but because of the way it was processed, the instant oats is very highly processed, right? Because of the way it was processed, it was completely different. Glycemic index was much higher, so then glucose spikes up, insulin spikes up. And then what happens when insulin spikes up, of course, is that it tells your body to take those calories and shuttle them into body fat. So when you eat the instant oats, a lot of those calories are going to go into storage, and therefore you're not going to have a lot of calories left over for energy. So therefore, you would expect that people will eat more at the next meal, which was lunchtime. And that's exactly what they showed. Exactly what they showed. A couple hundred calories extra. And they did similar things with apples, right? You compare apple to applesauce. So you take an apple and you eat it as an apple, or you could bake it and then puree it into applesauce. Same calories, same carbs, same food. But the way that you change it is through the cooking and through the pureeing, which makes it easier to absorb. The digestion is much easier. The absorption is much easier. So it's digested much quicker because the gastric transit time, which is how quickly the stomach releases this food, is much faster. And then the absorption is faster because you've actually ground it up, and the cooking actually makes it easier to absorb these nutrients. So you spike up the glucose much higher and your insulin effect is much higher, but it's for the same food, which I think is actually really, really interesting because it goes to show the importance of these other considerations, the digestion and the absorption to affect it, because how quickly you absorb that glucose makes a difference. And it does for everything. Like if you think about smoking, for example, when you smoke, you want to smoke because the nicotine goes from your lungs into the bloodstream, right? And you get this massive quick hit. If you eat this nicotine, like with gum, you don't get this massive spike and you don't get the same addictive quality, right? And that's why you use nicotine gum. That's why you inject heroin. Drug users inject heroin. They don't eat heroin. People sniff cocaine because it goes into the blood vessels directly. They don't eat cocaine, right? It's much less effective. So how quickly those things spike up makes a difference. And that's a question, not of the total carbohydrates, but of how those carbohydrates are digested and absorbed, which gets to the question of ultra processed foods. That's why the processing makes a huge difference because you could take a food like, you know, the processed foods, when you change it with the texturizers and emulsifiers and add these extra chemicals and then grind it up and then make it easy to absorb, and you've got this, you make it lighter, so you've got this vanishing caloric density, and then you take out the other stuff that makes you full. Like you can change the foods by the processing, not simply the calories or the carbs or anything else, but just by the processing and make it much more obesogenic. And that's interesting to me because that's the very first thing in the food guidelines, right? Eat real food. And really, back when we first met, that was the thing we always talked about, right? Always real food, real food. You gotta eat real food. That's as important as anything else, right? And it goes beyond the calories, goes beyond the foods and so on to the processing. But really, it's interesting because there's so much more to weight loss, weight gain than just calories. And I've read a lot of books about it, and so few people talk about it, right? It's like, to me, it's very interesting, all of these things and how you can apply these things. But, you know, Sure, it's complex, but hey, welcome to the real world, right? If you know about it, then you can do something about it.
Well, I think the whole model, if you look at every nutritionist, every dietitian, every personal trainer, right, every doctor that's dealt with obesity, it was easier for them to just blame the patient.
Yeah.
Right? So it's easier for them to say, you're just not doing it hard enough because it's so simple. All you have to do is flap your arms higher and you'll fly. You know, you'll create more lift. If you flap your arms higher, you'll create more lift. So just work harder. Because obesity is a cerebral counting and restriction thing. There's nothing else to it.
Yeah, it's a
Right?
math thing.
Well, it's like, like we talked about Tro before, it's like someone's drowning, you say, just breathe more air than water. Just breathe air. Like you won't drown. Like you're out there drowning in the middle of the ocean. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. Throw me a life jacket. Help me out. Let's figure this out. And that's why it's so frustrating for so many people. And especially like we were talking about, if you're 400 pounds, you go, okay, I'm just going to have salad all day. And then you're starving and miserable. Then you end up at McDonald's on the way home because your body's telling you need that. And then you say you have no willpower and you can't. It's because physiologically there's an issue.
Yeah, and sometimes it gets into things such as hedonic hunger, like food addictions, for example. I mean, there's a growing research into this food addiction, like can you be addicted to foods? And the answer, I think, is actually yes. So there's this whole Yale food addiction score and so on. But, honestly, if you ever watch some of these shows, like, you know, 800-pound people, 1,000-pound people, right? What you can see is that they're clearly addicted, right? They can't move. They know the food is killing them, right? It's not subtle in any way, but they can't stop eating. Like that's addiction. Like that's simply addiction. And not every and it's always ultra processed foods, right? You don't see people stuffing their face with, broccoli, right? Or stuff like that. It's always like some kind of fast food that they're eating. It's a problem because if you are addicted, then you have to treat the addiction seriously rather than just these simple, it's a math, it's a calories in, calories out, right? And that's where this whole shaming and all this stuff comes in because it's like you can either admit that the advice of calories in, calories out was wrong, or you can say the advice is right and then the person is bad, right? The people can't follow our advice. But that makes no sense at all because it's like if you have 70% of the American population is overweight or obese, how can it be an individual problem, right? It's like you have 100 kids in a school, one fails. Sure, that could be an individual problem. What if 70 kids fail? Is it an individual problem? Or should you instead look at the school environment and all these systemic factors? It's clearly a systemic thing, but the people in charge of the system don't want to admit that it's a systemic problem. They're like, no, 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 no. It's a calories in, calories out math problem. It's the people that are stupid, right? It's not my fault. It's your fault, right? And that's the worst thing you can do because you're shifting the blame. It's basically blaming the victim. And that's what I mean that it's not their fault because if you're stuck in this system, stuck in this environment where you have the food pyramid, which is incredibly,
Gaslighter.
obesogenic, right? The base is all bread and, refined carbohydrates. And it's like, okay, the advice you thought that was good. This is your advice that you thought was so good. 6 to 11 slices of bread a day. It's like, I don't think it's very good advice. Yet, for decades, you just blame the people for gaining weight.
We could have lost our medical license for questioning that. Right. You really look at Noakes and Fetke and all the crap they went through. And you go, gosh, all they were saying is just don't eat cereal. I mean, and then they were making scientific reasons for what they're saying. And you go, gosh, dang it, it's crazy. And now it's the standard of care. And you go, it's kind of weird now when people are like, hey, I'm following the food pyramid. I'm having a steak tonight. You go, oh my gosh, this is
I know.
crazy. Like,
I
what
know.
a change from 1 week to the next. It's unreal. A
Unreal.
lot of it was your work of this stuff, and Tro, one of my favorite quotes ever. I was interviewing Jason one time and he was talking about some standard of care thing. He goes, it makes a lot of sense as long as you don't think about it very much. It's so true. So many things these people like come with this argument, and you look at them and you go, where are
It's
you
like
coming from?
yeah, it's
Like
like
they
the
have no data to
thermodynamics
support what
thing.
they're saying. And you go, what the heck are you talking about? But they're confident what they're saying.
Yeah, it's like anybody who says, "Oh, it's thermodynamics," right? Then I know they're like not very smart about the whole thing, right? Because it's like clearly they don't know thermodynamics and clearly they don't understand the whole what we're discussing, which is that, those calories don't get created or destroyed. Yes, they go somewhere, but do they get used up or do they get stored? That's the question, right? Not whether they exist or not. So it's sort of a shorthand for me. The minute somebody starts talking about thermodynamics, I'm like, okay, I don't. Let me disengage because I'm not going to get anywhere. These people are
And
too
they try
far.
to over, for instance, someone has celiac disease, right? And they're eating all this food and they keep losing weight. Like people were dying. Like I knew this guy in Germany almost died. He goes, I couldn't gain weight. I was eating everything. So
Yeah,
he wasn't exercising more. It's just he wasn't absorbing the food. He couldn't get nutrition because his gut was
yeah,
so jacked up, right?
yeah,
So he switched over to corn, and guess what? He started gaining weight and feeling good again. So it's there's so many factors involved. And one of the things we touched on, I would really love to hear both of your opinions on this. So many people I talk to go, all of us have done it. Like Rob Sivas, we talked about on episode 10, and he says like you could eat all you could eat steakhouse, eat all the steak, be totally stuffed, and they bring another steak, and you go, no thanks, I'm full, I don't want any more. But instead of that, they bring your favorite dessert, and you go, okay, I'll have it, right? So I've talked to people who are on the GLP-1s, and they go, I'm not even hungry at all, but I'm still eating. I'm forcing myself because I want that food, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the hedonic hunger, right?
Hedonic, yeah.
That's the hedonic hunger because you're not eating. It's like every dessert is like that, right? You're not eating because you're hungry, because you finished your meal. You're eating because you want to, right? Or it satisfies this emotional hunger or the conditioned hunger, right? You're so conditioned to having something to eat that you cannot even fathom that, hey, maybe you should just skip it because you're so full because of the GLP-1s, right? And that's the importance of sort of understanding these sort of different types of hunger and really just something that we don't talk about enough. In the book, I try to make it very, very practical too. So I have like three golden rules of weight loss because they sort of cut across all three types of hunger. And one is avoiding ultra processed foods because again, it cuts across. So yeah, very high insulin stimulation, for example, also because of the very quick absorption, you get real conditioned, real hedonic, pleasure from it. So, the hedonic hunger. And three, because it's so convenient and everything, you can get easily conditioned. Like you need a snack, you need a snack, you need a snack. Well, ultra processed foods is the answer, right? Second is fasting because again, similarly, it cuts across. It actually helps reduce the hungers because it takes away, breaks away a lot of the habits. Oh, I got to eat because I always eat. Cuts across a lot of that. And then the third is really to find yourself a supportive group because the environment, you're influenced by your friends, you're influenced by your family, you're influenced by your environment. It's very, very important. It shapes all of us to a huge degree. And so you got to find yourself in that right space because you're going to get the support that you need to do stuff. It's just like if all your friends run marathons, guess what? You're going to be running a lot, right? It's just the way it is. Like if your friends play basketball, you're going to go play basketball, right? You see it all the time, right? It's like,
Hmm.
in certain neighborhoods, hey, everybody's doing this. Why? No, it's not like an individual. I just decided to do it. It's because we're social people, right? Why,
Hmm.
why, why deny that? And then in the book, there's also sort of 50 sort of weight loss tips, which is like lesser tips to really just get it across. So, I was going to mention if you pre-order, we're also running a special masterclass, which is going to be free with any of the pre-orders or the within the first week or two, which is going to be along with the fasting method. So it's sort of a week-long deep dive into all the aspects that we talk about in the Hunger Code, because we're really excited and we want to sort of help people get off on the right foot. So we're going to do it all, do a master class together. It'll be free with purchase, which is a great deal because the master class is normally sold by the fasting method. It's like $499, right? $499. So for a $30 book, you get this master class free. But it's just because we want everybody to sort of let's get it out there. Let's get that understanding so we can really push past this sort of silly just eat less sort of thing that didn't work for anybody.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome, actually. That's really great. Like
Right.
we'll put a link here for all of our listeners and our patients, like to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and guys, I just want to say this. I don't think there's another text that has probably reversed more metabolic disease in the world. I don't think there is. I got to be honest with you. Other than the obesity code, diabetes code, I don't think so. This is, it's like it's crazy. Like the value, it's. I remember seeing, the value is so immense, right? It's so immense, and I think sometimes we take that for granted. We take for granted the fact that it is literally, this is gold. This can help you if you've been going up and down your weight your entire life. If you've been struggling with weight, struggling to understand what is going on, why do you struggle? Why is it hard for you? Why are you hungry all the time? If it hurts for you, to walk up the stairs and you're like, I know I need to lose weight. I mean, there's not a better resource to get right now. I mean, you can go to the gym and you can go to some like 20-year-old who's going to tell you, eat less calories. You can get that, but it's not going to give you insight, right? It's not going to help you understand your struggle. I had like one little bone of contention. I don't know if we still have time or not, but maybe I'd like to hear it. This idea of that dessert, room for dessert. I think it's also biologic. I think it's, because I've looked at other animal studies and they present, animals like dogs like a different food, right? After it's eaten a certain amount after it's sated, right? And it eats more rather than if they're presented the same food again. So I think that there's some, biologic, drive to seek out different flavors and different, like tastes and different, I definitely think it's tightly linked with like pleasure eating, like eating because maybe you're depressed or eating with, but like, I think there's something also biologic there.
No, I agree. And I think that's the food variety, for example, makes a big difference. So that's the hedonic side of things, right? Because if you've eaten, to your fill, then you've satisfied it. But then once you change that, it doesn't necessarily have to be sweet, because definitely sweet stuff is going to light up the, reward
Hmm.
centers and stuff. But even if you have something savory, like people enjoy that very much. So you can still make room for that other thing, yeah, even though, I mean, that's why, you know, they talk about, remember, I don't know if you guys know the Kempner rice diet.
Oh
So
yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
people talk about that as if that explains anything, right? But the thing is that you can eat all the white bread and sugar, white rice and sugar that you want, right? This is from the 20s, right?
Hmm.
And people lost weight. It's like, yes, because if you spent the last 6 months eating every single meal as white rice and sugar, you are going to eat until your hunger is just done. And then it's like, no thanks, I don't want any more because it's not that good, right? So you're gonna lose weight because you've reduced the hedonic side of the food so dramatically, right? It's not just the homeostatic, it's not just the carbohydrates. It's much more complex. And if the Kemner rice diet works so well, then do it. Prescribe it for your patients. Go ahead. Tell me if it works. It absolutely will not work because it's so miserable. if you're eating white rice and sugar, and that's the only thing you're eating for every meal, that you're never going to stick to it. Why? Because you're denying the basic fact that eating is pleasurable, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Variety.
sardines or liver diet. You're like, okay, I'm done. I'm
You
not
can
gonna eat
do
more
any
than
of them. If you
it's
can,
not exciting. Like Troy, you
exactly.
talk about that hyper palatable foods. Like if you give me unsalted macadamia nuts, I'll have two or three and go, okay, that's it. You have the salted,
Yeah.
flavored, like you
Yeah.
could eat the whole can, no
Yeah.
problem, right? And
Yeah.
so part of it's that, like people think every meal has to be like this pleasurable thing. You have to have like French one time, like every single meal. Instead of saying, I have one guy who lost like 100 pounds just eating hamburger. He would just make ground hamburger. He would just put a different sauce on it every day. It was eating the same thing. He goes, I'm happy, I'm good, instead of
Yeah.
having cookies and donuts, right?
Yeah. But again, it gets to the other side of the pleasurable side, the hedonic side of eating, which can run into problems because it's like even if you eat the right foods, it can still run into problems. So it's not like the be all and end all. And
Yeah,
that's
and
why,
certainly the volume addiction. There's there like some people who like they want that relaxed tone of having a full, and I'm one of those people. A nice full belly. Gets that vagal tone sort of going. There's so many. Hunger is such a fascinating thing. I can't.
such a
Uh,
fascinating topic. Actually,
I should have like Tro and I were on a cruise together, the low carb cruise, and Tro ate like the waiter was like, there's no way in heck. He says, bring me 5 steaks. And the guy's like, I can't do that. I'm going to get fired. And the next night, he's like, how many do you want? And I'll bring his Tro downed them all. But he's eating one meal a day. And you see, like, oh, how does it? Like, you can go, like, you can eat a lot. You can put a lot of volume in there. That's pretty amazing, right? Most people would be like, I'm
yeah.
done. I don't want to see steak for another
Honestly,
week.
I was born like that, Brian. I was born. No, I'm not kidding
It's
you.
amazing.
I was born like that. I remember, winning eating contests as a little kid. I remember 16, like when my family got together, and that, I looked into genetically, like I'm just driven to eat. I'm just that. But if you give me addictive substances, then it
yeah.
goes through then it's like on overdrive,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like if you put me in like a I definitely have a strong drive to eat. But that's the importance of satiety, right? Which is the other side of the hunger equation. Eating filling foods. And believe it or not, one of the most satiating things for me is just not eating.
Yeah.
Just think about that for
Yeah.
a second. Not eating is literally one of the most satiating experiences for me. If I
I
don't
find that
eat for
too.
48 hours, I'm not hungry.
Yeah. Totally true. Me too. Same thing.
It's the
Like that
same
first
thing.
day, like more mental, but after that, you go like I'm not, I can go forever. It's not a
Yeah,
big
actually,
deal.
the physical side of things, like when I do these 5 days, we do these 5 day reset fasts and stuff. It's never the physical hunger that gets you. It's to me, it's always the ooh, you know,
Hedonic,
it's the hedon. It's like ooh,
of
that
course.
tastes really good, right? Especially since I haven't eaten for 4 days, right? It's never the physical hunger, never. And I always think it makes sense because what happens is you're driving your insulin levels low. So as long as you have fat store, your body's supplying you with all the calories you need. So you actually don't have that physical hunger because you're satisfying it with the calories that you're releasing from the fat, and then your sympathetic tone goes up, which suppresses your appetite and so on. But it's the hedonic side that always gets you. So then, so I always think, okay, that actually makes complete sense to me. But, as a topic, hunger is almost never discussed, right?
Yeah.
Like, as I go out there, I'm like, okay, where are the books about hunger? The different, if you were to ask somebody, what are the three main types of hunger? You'd get a bunch of blank stares, right?
Hmm.
It's like, why? We should be talking about this because it's important, because it's not about just the diet, it's about eating behavior, which includes social, environmental, hedonic, homeostatic, all of those
Hmm.
different things. And that's why, I hadn't this I see this as a sort of follow-up to the obesity code because I think it takes that sort of hormonal piece and then sort of moves it into sort of a different realm, but really getting to that sort of deeper understanding of what is it? Because it's like we talk about it, but how is it defined? What does the scientific literature say, right? If you go into the literature, there is all this data on homeostatic hunger, hedonic hunger, conditioned hunger. It's all well described. Why don't we talk about it, right? Why do we only talk about calories? It's actually ridiculous. I mean, at least with the new food guy, we're talking about processing, real food, and so on. But it all ties back in to how those real foods and eating less of the refined carbohydrates satisfy hunger.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Jason, just one other plug since Tro got to do it. All of your books, my patients can read it and they get it. Like you'll make an analogy that makes sense. And people go, that makes sense. Like, how come I didn't? Like, it's so simple. Like you see it and you go, that's so obvious. Like, like when you were talking to me about like, how do you dose your insulin? By how many carbs you're taking in. Well, once if you don't take in carbs, how much insulin do you have to shoot, right? And you start realizing, yeah, that makes sense. Like, why would I put in carbs and then treat it with insulin? Doesn't make sense. But you have a unique gift in that of just explaining it. So the common guy, I could be in the jungles of Guatemala and I explain it and people get it. They go, yeah, that makes sense. Like a 12-year-old gets it, but top-notch endocrinologists just can't they can't get this concept. There's some kind of a block. It's too simple. They go, that can't be. Like, this is what I learned 20 years ago.
Like, let's just be honest, and I think we can all be honest here without being too contentious. A lot of doctors, right, have just been following orders, not being paid to think. They're being paid to visit. They come out of medical school with debts. The only way they can get it is seeing people on occurrence. And I think it's resulted in a bunch of doctors who are scared, fearful, and just following orders, right? And we have the luxury, I think, Jason is such a well-respected profile that he can say almost whatever he wants at this point, right? And I think you and I have also sort of taken that act of courage, and people know and respect us to the point where we can do that. But I think a lot of doctors are out there, that endocrinologist you were just talking about, they haven't even thought about this. They haven't even thought about hunger.
Yeah. What I always think is funny is that the endocrinologist, right? If you give somebody insulin, right, and that happens like every single day, they gain weight, right? So then you can ask the question, why did this patient gain weight? It's like, because you gave him insulin. But isn't that obvious? You know the cause. You caused it. But then if you're to,
then you get upset with the patient. You gained weight. I told you to eat healthy.
Yeah.
Those calories, but I gave you insulin to store fat.
Yeah. Ask the endocrinologist. It's like, oh, it's all about calories. It's like, hello.
Yeah.
Root cause here. What happened? Did they change their calories in between when, yes. But the insulin was the root cause of why their calories in is greater than calories out, right? It's the effect. It's not the cause, right? The cause was the high insulin. The effect was the calories in, which is greater than calories out, which is the same thing as saying weight gain, right? It's like, how do you not understand that? Or somebody gives them prednisone, right? Which is synthetic cortisol. They gain weight. Every single doctor knows that already. So then if you're to nail them down and say, what caused their weight gain? They'll say calories. It's like, hello.
They didn't exercise enough.
Yeah, but exercise? I don't think
This is true for everything. This is true for, they still, I had a medical student come to me and we're talking about radiology. He still calls it a wet read.
Yeah.
Jason, a wet read. We haven't had, X-rays where we hold them up and the chemicals drip for 30 years. And he calls it a wet read. I was like, what's a wet read? He's like, I don't know. It's like that thing when you get it early, when you're reading it, before the radiologist reads it. And I was like, well, why is it called a wet read? He's like, gosh, I don't even know.
Tro, could you imagine being Jason's attending and you're rounding and he starts asking you like, well, why is this and why is that? And you're like, crap, you don't want to look stupid in front of all the students.
Get out of here, kid. You probably get written up or whatever, Yeah, people don't realize, how malignant it can be, Do
you remember those light boxes that were around all the hospitals?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd go in and, right?
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
When I was at USC, when I was at LA County, it was a total disaster, no organization. So there's, their trauma guy, and there's like 10 teams rounding on the guy, and everyone's like, there's one x-ray, and all the teams have taken it. They're looking, like, you spend half your time trying to find stuff. Like, there was, like, now you look on the computer, it's all there. It's like those days, you're hunting people down, calling the intern, trying to find the dang x-rays.
I know, where's the x-ray? Where's the x-ray? I have
one copy of it.
And then it's like, somebody signed it out. So primitive.
Yeah.
But that's it. We're dealing, I think, we're lucky where we can, I think all of us, we have the humility maybe to admit that things we don't know, whereas most of medicine is just filled with hubris and I think it's, I had to root that part out of me. I don't know, maybe you guys were better than me when I was 30, I had to really like identify that part and get it out. Because I don't think medicine does that,
I think, Troy, there's a guy that you two both had conflict with. I won't say his name out of just being a nice guy. But, he's made arguments that are so dumb over all this time. So you guys don't know what you're talking about. And his solutions are terrible. No one ever quotes him. But remember during COVID, he had this whole contraption made at his house, and he did this crazy thing. You know what I'm talking about, right? And I was looking, going, that poor guy, he lives his life like that. Like, it's like there's no science in what he's doing, but he believes wholeheartedly.
He imprisoned his kid. He imprisoned his 13-year-old kid.
Leave.
He had to put his food on a tray that he put underneath, in the basement where he forced his kid to stay because he had COVID. I mean, it was a guy who, literally scared people on his website, said, "Don't let your child be shamed into weight stigma. Join my family weight loss plan." I mean, this is probably the most predatory, worst doctor you can imagine. And I know Jason probably doesn't want to say his name, and neither will I. But
I'm not going.
He knows who I'm talking about. Do you know who we're talking about, Jason? Let's just say Canadian obesity doctor.
Oh, okay.
Who.
Yeah, when I saw that, I'm like, this guy is totally out of touch with reality, and you kind of reason things out, and you go, okay, let's look at our odds of things.
Just listening, it's like, I don't feel sorry.
Oh yeah, let me tell you, I read his book just to, I like to read other people's opinions.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I wrote it down. It was awful. If you want chocolate, have chocolate. Eat 7 times a day. Have carbohydrates, and then hiding under the guise of any diet works while you imprison your kids and fearmonger families into your weight loss program. I would say disgusting human, so sorry.
Yeah, I just like these kind of things because I remember a lot of these guys were attacking Jason one time. I'm like, what the heck is this? Jason's not, he's too smart to like defend himself because he's like, these guys are idiots, so I'm not wasting my time. So I kind of just jumped into the fray. But all those guys within 2 weeks were hawking this new GLP-1 drugs that were coming out, saying you don't have to change your stuff, just shoot this drug. These guys are idiots. Just do your thing. You could eat cookies and you're fine.
Oh yeah, the people who said that's not hormonal are all of a sudden giving a hormonal drug.
It's not hormonal. Yeah, exactly.
It's not hormonal. Obesity is not hormonal, but take this hormone because
exactly
because it lowers your calories. Don't you see?
Yeah, but
and
what's
for $99
the root
a
cause,
month,
right? What's the root cause? It's the hormones that led the calories in to be less than the calories out, which led to the weight loss, right? And what I always think is funny is like, insulin and glucagon. People say, it's not insulin, it's not insulin. It's like, okay, so glucagon is like the opposite of insulin, right? It's like, so what's GLP? It's glucagon-like peptide. You're basically stimulating the opposite peptide of insulin. And what happens? Oh, you lose a lot of weight. It's not about the hormones, though. It's not about the insulin. Despite the fact that when you give a lot of insulin, you gain weight. And when you give a lot of glucagon-like peptide, you lose weight. But hey, nothing to do with the insulin, people. It's like, okay.
Well, like we've talked about too, what are the meds they use? They use we'll give you this pill, you pee out the extra sugar you're eating. Well, don't eat extra sugar, you don't have to pee it out, you don't need the drug anymore, right? And then the other one, what was the other one? It lowered, it raised LDL cholesterol but lowered cardiac risk.
Yeah, same one.
Yeah, the SGLT.
Same one. Yeah. So you go, I didn't want to say that drug name necessarily, but it's just funny. All these guys are jump on that bad wagon. It's like, why? Troy's like, why don't you just put less sugar in and you pee out less sugar? I think Jason said years ago. So it's awesome, man. Thanks so much. Hey,
Thank
everyone,
you.
hunger code. It's going to be backwards on mine. Tro made me backward camera somehow, but it's awesome. Hunger code. Like, this is super, like, the thing that when I get one of your books, Jason, I'm like, I wonder what he's writing next, because it's going to be like this, like that, the Rocky sequel, like it's going to be Rocky 12 or something coming up. But you go, hey, this also, but it all
It's
kind of
still
goes
good.
under the same, you know. I still recommend the
It's
magic
about
pill that you were in. That was huge, yeah, huge. Like, you were the first ones that really talk about these things. It's pretty amazing.
what I'm really interested in is actually like what causes stuff, right? Which is really, if you think about the themes of the obesity code, the hunger code, the diabetes code, and the cancer code, it's really trying to understand, hey, what actually causes all this stuff, right? So rather than taking the easy answer that it's, hey, it's about the calories, right? No, no, no. Let's get deeper and deeper and deeper. Okay, with hormones. The hunger code takes that further and says not just the hormones, which is only deals with the homeostatic side, not the hedonic or conditioned side. The diabetes code was like, let's look a lot further than just the glucose, because there's a lot more going on. It's actually the hyperinsulinemia, which I think is the problem, right? And then the cancer code, which is actually my favorite book of all of them, is really about, it has like not that much to do with the rest of it, but it's just this really, to me, a very interesting discussion about this sort of evolutionary paradigm of cancer, which I actually think is completely fascinating, and actually explains why a lot of what the new development in cancer treatments are, like things like liquid biopsies, things like immune therapies, explains why they work, right? Because this whole idea of genes cause cancer is very simplistic. Like, we know being overweight increases your risk of cancer, but it's not like being overweight is not mutagenic, doesn't cause gene mutations, right? So why is it? Well, there's a lot of good reasons, but anyway,
So doesn't it all come back to metabolic health, like all these things that you're talking
a
about, the
lot
root
of it
cause
is
of all these
metabolic
things?
health. Yeah,
Yeah.
insulin is actually part of the issue, but not the whole issue, right? But it certainly does come back to the hyperinsulinemia that you see. But anyway, to me, it was a fascinating sort of to sort of dig deeper into that. But anyway,
Maybe
yeah.
I think your next one will be like dementia code or the
Yeah.
schizophrenia code or something like that. Yeah,
Sure
it's
will be.
amazing. But hey, thanks so much for taking time. I know you're busy. Thanks for
Thanks
joining
so
us.
much, guys.
Tro, always good to see you. And Jason, thanks for everything, man. We really appreciate you. And I know you changed my career path and Tro's, and like, really, because of what you talked about and took a bunch of garbage for, now they go, oh yeah, that's obvious. Now it's obvious to everyone, but you're the Semmelweis of our time. But you didn't go crazy in an insane asylum, so
Yeah.
that's good. They finally caught on, hopefully.
Finally. Okay, thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks, listeners. Thanks for everybody who supported us, and Patreon. People on Patreon, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon by going to lowcarbmd.com.